Steve Yzerman is one of the most respected players in NHL history. A three-time Stanley Cup champion, the longest-serving captain, and a 1,700-point scorer. The man known simply as Stevie Y not only helped redefine what it meant to be a franchise player, he also helped pull the Detroit Red Wings out of a two-decade slump and turn them into a dynasty. But believe it or not, Yzerman wasn't taken first overall, or second, or even third in the 1983 NHL draft. That's right. 3 teams passed on the future Hall of Famer before the Detroit Red Wings called his name at 4th overall. And while one of those players ended up being a fellow legend in his own right, the other two, well, their stories took pretty different turns. So, in today's video, we'll be going over the 3 players taken before Yzerman, how their careers turned out, and why Detroit's franchise-changing pick at 4th overall may have been the biggest steal in one of the most talent-rich drafts of the 1980s. The first overall pick, Brian Lawton. With the first overall pick in the 1983 draft, the Minnesota North Stars made history. They selected Brian Lawton, a high-scoring American center from Mount St. Charles Academy in Rhode Island. He became the first U.S.-born player ever selected first overall, and the first high school player to go number 1, 2 historic milestones that brought crazy high expectations. Lawton had all the tools, silky hands, high hockey IQ, and even drew comparisons to Gretzky at the time. Funny enough, he wore number 98 early in his career but switched to number 8 after 2 seasons. Fans kept saying he was ripping off the Great One's 99. But despite the hype, Lawton's NHL career never took off the way scouts imagined. Over 9 seasons in the league, he bounced around to 6 different teams and struggled to live up to the pressure that came with being the top pick. He finished with just 112 goals and 266 points in 483 games, a reach from what's expected of a first overall snag. What most fans don't know is that Lawton's struggles weren't purely about talent. There were development issues, yes, but the NHL's attitude toward American players at the time also played a role. The league was still very Canadian-dominated, and there was skepticism about drafting U.S. high school players so high. Lawton later admitted that the pressure, expectations, and lack of a clear development path weighed heavily on him. During his 5 seasons with Minnesota, he felt the team held him back early on by limiting his ice time, and over time, his relationship with the North Stars went south. Things came to a head in 1988 when he didn't make the National League roster and refused to report to the minors, threatening to retire if he wasn't traded. Minnesota suspended him on October 8th and 3 days later traded him to the New York Rangers. After the deal, Lawton said, "This is a happy day for me. I'm very thankful they moved me and moved me quickly." Interestingly, Lawton found success off the ice, going on to become an NHL agent and later GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. After retiring, Brian Lawton started his own agency, Lawton Sports and Financial. By the time it was bought by Octagon in 1998, he was already representing 12 NHL players. He went on to represent big names like Mike Modano, Sergei Fedorov, and Ryan Malone, and later became Octagon's head of hockey, helping the company grow into the second-largest hockey agency in the NHL. Although he did find success in the hockey world, still, in terms of on-ice performance, Lawton remains one of the more disappointing first overall picks in NHL history, especially when you consider who went a few spots later. At 2nd overall, Sylvain Turgeon. At number 2, the Hartford Whalers selected Sylvain Turgeon, a flashy left-winger from the Hull Olympique of the QMJHL. At the time, Turgeon was seen as a can't-miss prospect. He had just put up 54 goals and 163 points in juniors, and scouts loved his speed, his shot, and his soft hands. And to be fair, Turgeon came flying out hot in the show. In his rookie season, he tucked 40 goals, instantly becoming a fan favorite in Hartford. And over his first 3 seasons, he tallied 140 goals, which actually put him ahead of Steve Yzerman in goal production during that stretch. So what happened? Well, like many players of that era, injuries derailed what could have been a much smoother career. A pulled abdominal muscle in '86 cost him a lot of time, and his production never really fully recovered. In 1993, Turgeon missed half the season after breaking his arm while sitting on the bench when he got caught in a collision between Gary Valk and Senators teammate Dennis Vial. He returned to play in January 1994, and after his contract ended in '95, he re-signed with Ottawa. But after not making the team, he was sent to the minors and spent that 94-95 season with Houston in the IHL, and couldn't quite land another NHL deal. In 1996, he left North America to continue his career in Europe, playing for the Kessel Huskies of the DEL, the Deutsche Eishockey Liga, Germany's top-tier hockey league. His pro career came to an end in Germany when he took a puck to the face, requiring reconstructive surgery under his left eye. That moment was the turning point. As Turgeon put it, "Right then I thought, it's time to make a change." After retiring, Turgeon settled down in Calgary and became a real estate agent, a natural fit, as he said he was following in his handyman father's footsteps. During his NHL off-seasons, he worked in construction, and over the years, he developed a strong interest in homes and renovations, making the transition into real estate an easy one. Although not the typical career path for a number 2 pick, the Quebec native still had some solid seasons, with his best coming in 1985-1986 with 45 goals and 35 assists for 79 points. Turgeon finished in the NHL with 495 points in 669 games, a solid career. But when you're drafted second overall, especially in a draft that included Yzerman, LaFontaine, and Neely, it's hard not to look back and wonder what could have been. An underrated fact? In the 1985-86 season, Sylvain Turgeon set a then-franchise record for most goals by a left winger with 45. He also scored the overtime winner in his first NHL playoff game, giving Hartford its first-ever postseason win on April 9, 1986. And well, most of you guys probably know Sylvain is also the older brother of Pierre Turgeon, who would go first overall in the 1987 draft and finish with over 1,300 points himself. Not a bad hockey family. At third overall, we had Pat LaFontaine. At third overall, the New York Islanders selected Pat LaFontaine, and this is where the draft really starts to hit GOAT territory. LaFontaine was an American phenom, putting up an absurd 234 points in 70 games with the Verdun Juniors the year before the draft. Picture something like the explosive offense of Bure and vision or playmaking of, say, Marner. He had an uncanny sense of timing and spacing, making him an elite playmaker, but could also score from anywhere at any time. Not to mention his two-way play and lead-by-example attitude, kind of like a Joe Sakic. LaFontaine made the jump to the NHL late in the 1983-84 season and immediately showed he was meant to be there. He was fast, smart, and had one of the nastiest releases in the game. Over the next decade, he became one of the league's elite playmakers and goal scorers. His best season came in 1992-93 with the Buffalo Sabres when he put up 148 points, 53 of those being tucks. That season, his line mate Alexander McGillney lit the lamp 76 times, still the highest single-season goal total by a Russian player. LaFontaine's career was sadly cut short by concussions, and he retired in 1998 after 865 NHL games. But he still racked up 1,013 points, including 468 goals. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2003 and is remembered not just for his skill, but for his incredible sportsmanship and off-ice leadership. Since retiring from hockey, LaFontaine has stayed involved in the sport. He was the president of hockey operations for about 3 months for the Buffalo Sabres in March of 2014, before resigning and going back to his original role with the NHL. LaFontaine had been working with the league on player safety issues before getting back on board with the Sabres. He's also the founder and president of the Companions and Courage Foundation, a nonprofit that builds interactive playrooms in hospitals to support children and families facing serious illnesses. On top of that, he's a co-founder of Valor Hockey, a company dedicated to designing and manufacturing hockey helmets. The buckets seem to be pretty good. One of them, the Valor Axiom, got a 5-star rating from the Virginia Tech Safety Testing Laboratory, the first new helmet to get that rating since 2017. No matter what, LaFontaine continues to make a huge impact both in and outside the hockey world. So yes, one of the 3 teams ahead of Detroit got it right. But even then, it's hard to say LaFontaine's impact on a franchise was bigger than what came next. Then, with the 4th overall pick, the Detroit Red Wings selected a quiet, humble 18-year-old center from the Peterborough Petes, Steve Yzerman. At the time, Detroit was desperate for change. They hadn't won a cup since 1955 and were known for being more dusty than dominance. But with Yzerman, the culture shifted close to instantly. He put up 87 points as a rookie, was named captain at just 21 years old, and went on to wear the C for the next 19 seasons. Still, the longest captaincy in NHL history. Under his leadership, the Wings went from the dead Wings to an all-out powerhouse. He finished his career with 692 goals and 1,755 points in 1,514 games, ranking top 10 all-time in points at the time of his retirement. But stats don't even do him justice. Early in his career, Yzerman was an offensive unit, dropping a career-high 155 points in 1988-89. more than anyone not named Gretzky or Lemieux at the time. But when Scotty Bowman took over in the 90s, Yzerman sacrificed personal stats for team success, evolving into one of the best two-way centers in the game. The result? 3 Stanley Cups, a Conn Smythe Trophy, an Olympic gold medal with Team Canada in 2002, and a place in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Oh, and after retiring, he went on to become the architect behind Tampa Bay's championship core, drafting beasts like Nikita Kucherov, Andrei Vasilevsky, and Braden Point. You could argue that no player taken in the 1983 draft had a bigger impact on their franchise, and maybe even the league, than Steve Yzerman. Looking back now, it's easy to say Yzerman should have gone first overall. But at the time, the picks weren't as clear. Drafting was a gamble, especially in the early 80s. Still, if you redrafted the class of 1983 today, there's a strong case to be made that Stevie Y goes first every single time. But what do you think? If you were building a team, would you take Yzerman over LaFontaine? How different would hockey history be if Detroit had picked someone else? Let us know in the comments. Drop a like if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive hockey content. We've got more stories like this on the way, from hidden draft gems to what-if careers that could have changed everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you beauties in the next one.